All right, so welcome to episode 15 of Transatlantic Brews TV, our weekly craft beer share and debate. I'm Mark Henshaw, and I'm here with Ryan Ponto, as always. It is the 23rd of December as we speak. We're getting very close to Christmas, and so I'm looking forward to some festive Christmas beers. I've already indulged in far too much food and more drink than I probably should do, to the point where feeling a little sluggish this afternoon, but I'm going to power through and deliver this show, because that's just the kind of idiot that I am, basically. Idiot. So, yeah. How are you, Ponto? How's it going? How's your week been?
I'm good. Not really a whole lot going on over here, actually. It's been a pretty slow lead up to a Christmas. First time I ever had that, actually.
Yeah, it has been quite slow. You all prepared? You ready for the big day?
Oh yeah, I did 2 days of online shopping, and that was all I needed to do, and I was good.
Yeah,
it really is. So easy these days.
Yeah, I did most of mine online just to avoid that. Last year, it was right down to the wire, braving the shops with people kind of barging people out of the way, or at least not realizing they're being like that, because they've lost all kind of sense of reality. But yeah, so I wanted to avoid that this year, and we seem to have done pretty well. So
that kind of sounds like Black Friday in the States somewhat. A horror story here.
I'm over exaggerating. I'm over exaggerating for kind of effect, but you know what I mean. And people lose sight of reality a little bit, don't they?
That's very true, especially when they want something.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm looking forward to a few beers now over Christmas. Well and truly off work and chilling out. So tomorrow's Christmas Eve. So far so good. But I've got a nice winter warmer. Again, another, because I did this a couple of weeks ago, a vintage ale. But it's 2014's vintage ale. Very kindly sent over to me as a Christmas gift from none other than you. So thank you very much. As a 1 year aged version of it, I'm looking forward to seeing how different that is. I confess to already opening a bottle of this the other night, so I already know it has improved for a year in the bottle, and there's certainly some elements of cellaring and aging having gone so far. But yeah, that's my beer for the week. What are you drinking, Ponto?
I have the Central City Red Racer, suggestively named Gingerhead Stout.
Gingerhead Stout.
Yes. Of course, as you can see, their mascot is a redheaded woman.
Yes.
So naturally, they felt they needed to play a pun on that, which is it's amusing after a few drinks.
You were drawn to the redhead.
Apparently.
Can you say?
It's also a stout.
It's interesting that it's a stout, actually. Ginger beers I've come across before in the paler sense, but ginger infused into a stout. Interesting. Sounds promising.
Yeah, should be good. Shall we crack on?
Let's crack open, and then we'll get to the news as per last week. So yeah, the rest of them are the 12 that you sent over. One's been opened so far. This is the second one. So I will still have a few to settle over the coming months and years. So
and to go out. Maybe a few less if I nick a few when I come over there.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We'll enjoy sharing that, I'm sure.
Oh, that'll be good.
Cheers. Should we get into the news? Which do you want to go first with your story?
Sure.
What do you got for us?
There is actually a new study from the University of Iowa, of all places, which I've sent a link to in here. They're suggesting that 1 to 2 beer a day drinking will actually slow the aging process on a genetic level.
Right.
Because apparently smoking and drinking changes your genetic makeup. And the way it does it with moderate amounts of alcohol actually will slow the wear and tear age of your body.
Right.
So meaning how old you seem based off what you look like, what your attributes are, all that, et cetera, versus your chronological age.
Right.
versus people who don't drink or drink too much.
Right.
They both show signs of acceleration.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
So having no alcohol at all. Now, I shouldn't say this isn't just beer, but it's saying the equivalent of 1 or 2 drinks a day, beer or, G&T if you like, or whatever.
Mm.
Any of it will help slow your aging process.
Right.
And they said that this is they've done a few studies on this, and it all supports this. Of course, there are exceptions to this. I would imagine people who are allergic to alcohol would probably not help them at all. It'd probably make it worse for them to live. But by and far, they said the average person should suffer some sort of improvement in longevity of their motor functions and all that sort of stuff that comes with youth.
Yeah.
Now, they're also, interestingly enough, trying to do a study to see if stopping drinking or smoking will change your genetic structure back or alter it again somehow, and see how that would affect people.
Okay.
And so I imagine they'd use for that study people who are, either recovering alcoholics or recent smokers who have stopped or quit, or people who are going through this process of quitting or abstaining for a period of time. Maybe there's apparently a new thing called Dry November I've been hearing about, where people stop drinking for the month.
Yeah, they do that in January over this way. Yeah, I've never really seen the point in just stopping for 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
If you were going to stop, surely it would be for a more prolonged period than just a month.
Exactly.
A month's not going to do anything. We've known for a long time, I think, that beer and wine, wine's always been credited as having loads of antioxidants and everything.
Which is true, it does.
Of course, is good for slowing the aging process, just as antioxidants in green vegetables in particular and things like that have a similar antioxidant kind of effect. But it was more recently, I guess, revealed that beer, in more recent years, that beer has similar antioxidant kind of qualities, in a slightly different way, of course. But for it to say that it actually slows the aging process down, on, I guess, a genetic level, that's fascinating to me.
It's
but
not
of course,
just beer, though. It's just saying alcohol in general. Which is even more.
So it must be not so much to do with the antioxidant effects. It must be just to do with the effects of alcohol then, because that's the only common.
Or maybe it's byproducts of fermentation, because I imagine there would be similar byproducts within wine and beer and other alcohols as the fermentation process happens.
Right, yeah.
So something to do with the combination of that, I would imagine. Yeah.
Fascinating, yeah. Fascinating, but I kind of expected that, similar to what they were saying with antioxidants, that drinking nothing at all has actually negative elements versus, and the same for having too much. And there's this line in the middle, or the sweet spot almost, where it's actually really beneficial. Good news if you like a few beers and, you stick to just the 1 or 2 in an evening. Mm-hmm. And enjoy it responsibly, then absolutely, that's great news. And
they've accredited this phenomenon as to why Keith Richards is Highlander.
He's the indestructible man, he'll live forever.
Yeah. If anyone doesn't know what Highlander is basically, it was a show that was on quite a while ago now. The guy would have to kill other Highlanders to stay immortal, because there can only be one. So Keith Richards is the Highlander, not just a Highlander, the Highlander.
Yeah. Oh dear.
You've got a news story of your own.
Yes, the big story in the UK at the moment is surrounding Camden Town Brewery. So, Camden Town Brewery are a London-based brewery, obviously. Funnily enough, based in Camden Town, or originally based Camden Town. So they started in 2010, and they grew rapidly, very, very rapidly over the last 5 years. They even recently started up a crowdfunding initiative to try and grow the brewery that way, with their audience. But they've actually just recently been purchased or bought out by Anheuser-Busch InBev, just adding to the list of acquisitions that we were talking about last week, particularly with particular reference to the ones happening in the States with Founders and Elijah Brewing, and Ballast Point tons, right? We went through loads of them last week, but it continues. As we can see, we're seeing more and more of this kind of thing, and Camden Town are the latest to be announced. So the whole sort of Twitter sphere, if you like, and the whole sort of blogging community have generally been out in their draves, just adding in their opinion as to what they think about the buyout generally. So the where I read the story in particular was the Financial Times. I'll drop a link in if you can get on there. It's worth a read just to see, just the general sales figure and when and how that's going to go through. But the transition will happen early next year, January 2016, as of which they will be in partnership with Anheuser-Busch. Mixed opinions from people. I've had everything from a well-known beer writer named Zach Avery comments on how essentially we inevitably have seen over the years how maybe it doesn't affect things straight away, but as the accountants inevitably get hold of great beers and everything, start reducing the running down the cost, or reducing the cost of production and allowing the ingredients to slip a little bit so that they can make more margin on the beer. He also comments on the fact that as brewers, big brewers, get more and more interested in buying craft brewers and they amp up the production of these, they're going to need more and more hops in particular, just because that's a key ingredient. Is lots and lots of hops to that kind of craft beer flavor, and therefore we might see that it makes it more difficult for smaller brewers to get hold of at a reasonable price if there's a shortage in hops, for example. He also talks about the reduced space on the bar for smaller players as well, as there's only a select amount of space on bars for smaller players to get their name out there. So a few good points in there, I think. And interestingly enough, there's another article from another beer writer, Mark Dredge, who's written a number of books and actually did work for Camden Town Brew for a while as well, for a couple of years. Well worth reading his thoughts on it. Obviously, he has an emotional attachment to the brewery, having worked there and living and regularly drinking at their brewery tap. Now, his is a far more positive outlook in that he says that the owner behind it is incredibly passionate behind it, and whilst he's behind the operation, he doesn't see anything changing, at least in the short to medium term. Whether or not his new bosses have something else to say about it is another matter. But he also goes on to say that in many ways, it's not within Anheuser-Busch's interest to take beers like, say, Camden Hells, which is their best-selling lager, and turn it into something like Bud Light, which, in my eyes, kind of makes sense. I mean, the reason they're buying up craft brewers is because they need a piece of that market, because big beer, mass-produced, bland beer is not growing. So the only way that they can continue to grow at the moment and get a piece of the action where things are growing in the craft scene is to buy up smaller brewers. So at least in the short term, I think I agree with him that it's not going to change in the short term, and the beers will remain great. I'm sure that it's not going to affect the flavour to the point where your average drinker would pick up on anything. What happens in the longer term is a completely different matter. But I mean, how many times have we seen this circle anyway? Smaller brewers get bought out, the recipe changes, and then lots of new ones come up in their place, and sort of round and round we go. So there's nothing particularly new about that in that way. We're just seeing in particular, Anheuser-Busch and SAB Miller as their new big beer conglomerate coming together to get a piece of that market. And there's nothing particularly new about it in many ways. It's just what happens, as we discussed before, with the route to market and things like that. And because they are so big now, it's things we've seen before, but it's a different face, and there's potentially different outcomes, I believe. But all in all, in the short term, I don't think there's anything major to be worried about. And I always think there'll be something new, there'll always be new interesting brewers coming up, but people will always want to seek out something more interesting than the mainstream. I think we've come too far, and he does make that point, actually, Mark Dredge does in the article, that beer's almost come too far to go back. So in many ways doesn't see the threats in that it's going to crush craft beer, or at least try to crush craft beer in ways in which they may maybe have tried to done in the past. But that's a matter of opinion, and we'll have to keep watching to see how it develops, because it's obviously a continually developing thing. But I've blabbed on and yapped on about that enough now. I think I've basically covered it, right? You get the point. So it's another acquisition, and it's more of the same, and we're going to keep seeing more of it.
It's a lot like we discussed I think it was last week about the big merger there and how that all went through, and I think we're gonna see the same thing as always, like you're saying, is they're going to keep buying and buying and buying, and some things will disappear from it, some things will improve, some things will stay the same. I mean, that's really what's going to happen. It just depends what it is. But that was a very interesting point, Rob, about the hop market there. Yeah. When you're saying they're going to need more and more, because hops are a big thing when it comes to craft brewing, which it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times you had a lovely IPA and you don't even want to know how many hops have gone into it, really, because it's so crazy.
Yeah.
And that brings up another possible growth in the industry is, you'll see more hop farms probably at some point, and they'll be bigger and bigger out of it, so long as the space in the regions is available. I mean, there's only so many regions that can grow hops successfully.
This is true. Yeah. I mean, Kent in England used to be a sea of hops, and I'd like to think that perhaps we will see some return of acreage in areas like that where it's been in decline for so long, during the years where essentially small craft produced beer was in decline at the same time. So that kind of makes sense, but you'd like to see a return to that. I left a comment actually on Zach's blog where he mentions that just likening the whole thing to a little bit like the vinyl revival in music, and it's natural for both of us actually to make comparisons to the music industry where possible, because that's our background initially, right? But the comparison that I made was that you've got vinyl makes a comeback, right? And that requires the very, very few pressing plants to produce more items, and essentially, the big guys got in on it. The big labels get in on it, and they start repressing over and over again lots of their back catalogue, because they realise that there's now a market for it and people will buy it. So they kind of squeeze out the independent record labels from the pressing plants, and therefore you have this big squeeze and this big backlog of say up to 6 months before an independent label can produce a basic release of a new record, because it's got to wait for say Fleetwood Mac Rumours or Led Zepp 4 to be repressed for the billionth time, because that's how the major labels have continued to kind of keep record sales going, is through their back catalogue. So in a way, it's a little bit like with the shortage of hop acreage, how we're having that squeeze as the big guys kind of get in there and take hold of it. But just as in the record industry, you're seeing independent record labels open up their own pressing plants, we could see a few brewers get together and get their own hop acreage, for example. I mean, surely that's no different to, say, the wine world, where they have their own grapes. They grow their own grapes. So, could we not see something like that, where actually it could be quite an exciting time for beer if you have all the ingredients and the brewing happening in one place, for example? It could add another depth and complexity to beer.
Well, adding on to that, do you remember I did a review on Persephone Brewing on their saison a while ago? Vaguely?
Yeah.
So they actually grow their own hops in their own little farm area they have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'll leave a link to their website, so you can actually, people can take a look and explore it. But they have some nice pictures of their hops, and they actually use what they need for hops, and they rent out the rest for other vegetable growing.
Cool.
But the point is, they use all of their own hops for their beer.
That's really cool. Yeah. So it's already
very similar to a winery then, in that regard.
Yeah. So it's already kind of happening. So yeah, I mean, I remain fairly optimistic, to be honest with you, about the future of it all. I just believe if the consumer wants access to these things, they will find it, and there will always be somebody else willing to start up new and create the kind of beers that people want to drink. That's basic supply and demand, and other than having a government-controlled economy that restricts these things, like what happened in the Czech Republic to their beer over the years, where they essentially became communist and everything was controlled by the state, including the brewers and everything, which ultimately obviously restricted innovation and growth and new breweries and things like that, because it was all state-controlled. Bar something like that, you're just not going to see craft beer die, because there is demand for it. So as long as there's demand for it, there will always be somebody else willing to start up and have a go, And,
I think this could be a really good period. I mean, although it might create a bit of strife or shortage in certain things for a short period of time, you'll see the guys who really want to go for it. They will go for it, and they will create some fantastic product in the interim to combat it.
Yeah, somebody with enough capital.
What happens every time you have all of this great competition, or even if you have the odds against you and the big guys are coming in, you're going to have to make something fantastically different than they can, and they can't move that fast, which is the benefit of being a small guy.
Yes,
you can change your product like that. No problem.
Exactly. They'll always be more nimble. They'll always have that, and it just takes somebody with enough entrepreneurial spirit and capital behind them, and passion there as well, to want to do it, and they'll do it. And there will always be somebody wanting to do that. That's exactly how. I mean, let's not forget where craft beer came from in America, from literally having nothing but the big brewers to the small guys with all sorts of passion, starting from nothing, and they built it from nothing. So, but I do believe, and I agree with going back to Mark Dredge's point, that craft beer's come too far now. It's not going to just suddenly disappear. There's too much interest.
Massive thing to have it disappear, really.
Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, that's pretty much it for there. It was well worth, if anybody's watching this retrospectively or live now, it's well worth having a look through those articles. Really well put together thoughts, both of those, balanced views as well on those pieces. So good reading, and yeah, we'll document more of this as and when it comes up, and keep an eye on it, I guess.
Now, as a quick little piece of fun,
beer is good for you.
Beer is good for you. That was the first one, yeah. And now we learned that we're going to get a lot more, I guess, good beer out of the mergers and stuff, possibly. That's the hope.
Potentially, yeah.
We hope.
Yeah.
Now,
we hope there'll be access to it. So carry on.
Now I've just sent a link into the chat here. There is a man, speaking of the big guys, there's a man who broke into a Budweiser plant in St. Louis. 19 years of age. And his name was Budweiser. First name Bud, last name Weiser.
Oh, dear.
He apparently crashed his car and then hopped the fence into the restricted area of the brewery.
Yeah.
And they got him within about 45 minutes. The cops came and grabbed him, and it was, it wasn't spectacularly awful or anything like that at the time, but just the fact that his name reflects where he broke into. It's a bit of a comedic pun, really, at that point.
Unbelievable. So is this like the funny, it's not all bad news section?
I guess so. We still have to get to the Nostramarcus section, your predictions for the future.
Oh, yeah, my prediction for the future. Okay. I don't have any.
You don't have any? So there's no future? There's
no future. We're all doomed.
There is no. We talked about just previously with all the takeovers and all that stuff. And
oh dear, what was I saying before? What was my prediction from? Can you remember from last week?
At some point, I believe it was at some point the big brewer, I think it was InBev, you said, was going to eventually start buying up coffee shops and hotel bars. That was it. Become like Whitbread.
We were talking about Whitbread and the cycle. Yeah, of course. Yeah, interesting. So, okay, I'll try and make a prediction with. Do I dare try and make a prediction with Camden Town?
Go for it.
Okay, all right. I predict that for the first. I don't know what to say with this one actually. With this one, You know what? I kind of think Mark Dredge's view is right. Is that in the medium term, at least the next, I don't know, let's say the next 5 years, I don't think they're going to change that much. I believe you might start after 5 years, after things are settled in. Perhaps you might start to see some major changes, and maybe closing of brewing locations, or at least amalgamating with other brewers. Perhaps I certainly think you'll start to see their beers more worldwide. I think that they will become a worldwide brand. You'll start to see their beers over in North America more. You'll start to see them in other parts of the globe. I certainly predict that. And I certainly predict that I think some of those beers may well, to keep up with demand, be brewed on other locations. Things like Camden Hells may well be brewed off-site from their London-based brewery under an arch at the moment. But I believe they've been doing some brewing in other locations anyway, as far as I understand, because they've been struggling with demand anyway, needing to grow and keep up with their demand and grow. So that wouldn't really surprise me. So, but yeah, I predict for the next 5 years you're not going to see too much change, other than that the brands will be pushed out globally, and you will see them more.
We'll come back to this in 5 years and see how right you are.
Okay, all right, good. I'm more confident of my prediction of the in the next, what was it? Must have been 10 years or so. I don't know. In the coming years, sometime in the future, they will buy up coffee chains.
Actually, all you said was sometime in the future. So that gives you lots of room to wiggle on, really.
It does. I mean, yeah, we could be sat here as old men.
And then you could be right, 50 even better if we're still doing this.
It's true.
Yes. Or it could be long after our time, and, InBev has gone on to who knows what, and maybe they're into space exploration by then. Maybe
they're like brewing beer on Mars and said, sod this, you can keep your Earth beer.
Maybe they're turning another sun into beer.
Yeah.
The first on fire beer.
Good.
Sounds like a horrible use of time, personally, but
we return to the beers.
Hey, how's your beer going?
It's good. So just returning to this, it's a Fuller's Vintage Ale 2014 year, so it's had a year in the bottle already. I've said before in a previous episode, I think it was only 2 episodes ago, actually, 2 or 3 episodes ago, where I opened the 2015, which the bottle is still here, actually. The empty bottle, the 2015-year-old bottle. So the 2015-year-old bottle was to celebrate the, what is it? How many years? They've been doing this for quite a few years now, and the 50th anniversary of the Marisotta malt, that was it. To celebrate that, they did it with all British ingredients. Now, the 2014 one has a mixture of classic British hops, but it also has the added additions of, so Golding's from England, but it also has the added additions of, what was it? It was Liberty and Cascade hops from America as well. So and that was used during a dry hopping stage to give it zesty grapefruit kind of aromas. I'm sure it was like that, young, zesty and grapefruit aromas. A year in, yes, there are still some fruity elements there, but definitely a lot of that initial hop kind of aroma and bite has died down a little bit. And as you'll test, Ponto, when we've had these beers before, they do start to take on more of a kind of weighty, kind of slightly brandy-like Cointreau-esque kind of flavour to it. So it gets richer and deeper, and so it mellows out all that slight bite and
also a bit syrupy, just a touch.
Yeah, just a little bit more of that, just like a slight element of treacle almost, but not in a sickly kind of way. Mm-hmm. But it's showing the beginnings of starting to do that, right? So 1 year in, and it's already, in my eyes, improved, because I do believe these are rather unremarkable when drank young. They do need a little bit of time in the bottle, really, to turn them from something that's just a solid, drinkable kind of British beer to something that's a little bit more exciting and interesting and worthy of savouring and, adding to your cheese board and taking to even better heights, which we've done already, by the way.
Yes,
combined with
you've had quite a bit of cheese tonight, haven't you?
Yes, quite a bit of cheese. Yeah,
in fact, beer, which goes better together than wine and cheese.
They do. I do believe that. Yeah, and part of that is the fact that cows don't eat grapes, but they do eat grass.
It's true.
And barley is a member of the grass family, essentially, right? So there's kind of logic there as to why I think that's the case. I'll just pop a link over to that article once again of my little rant about why I think beer is better with cheese than wine is. Bear with me a second.
While you're doing that, just to reiterate, my beer is the Gingerhead Stout from Central City Brewing.
Cool. How's it going?
That's his name. It's quite good. It's very smooth. You can definitely smell the gingerbread sort of spices in it, the molasses, all that sort of stuff. It's quite prominent in the smell, but on the flavor, it's actually quite balanced in there. It's almost like taking a backseat to the regular stout flavors you'd expect. The darker sort of roasty bits of flavor from it.
Yep.
But it has that sort of taste of molasses, that sort of feel in your mouth that's a bit thicker. Of course, that could be all in my head just because I know what molasses is like. Yeah. It definitely has some sort of like clove and cinnamon sort of flavors to it, which are actually balancing quite well with the normal coffee-like roastiness in the malts. Yeah. Finishes with a very nice sort of tangy, sweet aftertaste. And it's very smooth. I've actually gone through this quite fast compared to what I usually drink.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it does sound like that would work quite well. I mean, you said it before, it kind of tastes like gingerbread in a glass. And I can see how, because although traditionally I associate ginger beers as being more of a lighter, paler kind of thing, but that idea of that slightly more rich, chocolatey, almost molassesy kind of element of the stout flavors combined with the ginger would be a more accurate representation of gingerbread almost in a glass,
Definitely.
So it sounds good.
I think the other ginger beers you're having are basically just ginger. It doesn't have the spices and everything else that you would usually find in gingerbread, right? Yes. Whereas this has the elements of that, which is very, very well done. It's not overly sweet or overly spiced, which I really like. It's very hard to find a beer like that for the winter time.
Yeah, no, that does sound like a really good winter treat, actually. Quite festive indeed. And I suppose we both tried to go for festive beers as we're at the 23rd of December.
That's right.
Yeah, and this is working for me pretty well. I'm certainly. Who brews the gingerbread stout again?
Central City.
Oh, yeah, you did say Central City. So I've never come across that when we've been to Central City before. So I'm dying to try one next time I get the chance.
It's new this year, actually. It's a brand new one they put out.
Okay, nice. I like the sound of that. I really do, because I love ginger generally. Just love ginger as an ingredient, and gingerbread. I like ginger, and I love stout. So what's not to like? Tea. Yeah, exactly. So it sounds really good. What's the strength of yours? Mine's 8.5.
This is 6%.
Yeah.
And also, $1 from every purchase of this beer goes to the BC Food Bank.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Which is just right above the alcohol content level for some reason, but it's good to know either way.
Yeah, just above the alcohol content for some reason. Yeah. Oh, dear. Yeah. Well, going back to the aging process then, if we can, just for a second.
By all means.
I've had this young before. I'm pretty sure I had one last year when it was new, last Christmas. But I didn't keep any. But you very kindly sent over a case of them, so I have lots to keep. So yeah, the plan is.
I remedied your mistake.
What's that? Sorry.
I remedied your mistake.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
Not cellaring.
It's much appreciated. They're stored away as best as I can because I don't have a cellar as such or a controllable fridge in the dark, but it's in a like a larder cupboard that's right in the center of the house, so the temperature should stay fairly consistent, which is what you want, somewhere between sort of 50 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And you obviously want it to be pitch black, which it is. And essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them in there. I'm going to take its temperature actually and just keep an eye, because swings of sort of 20 degrees or so can wreak havoc on a beer when it's aging. So you really don't want that. You want something at least 8%, so it ticks that box at 8.5. But these are designed to be aged. They're bottle conditioned, which obviously is going to continue to develop the beer over time. So I'll be very interested to see how. I've had a couple of these so far just to enjoy for the season. I'll have one more for Christmas, and then over the next few months, I'll run a series of experiments, shall we say, as to how they change over the months and years. And when you come over in the summer, Ponto, we'll no doubt partake in a few. I think we should do another, and this time we should actually record it and do it properly.
Yeah,
we'll do another one of our sort of. Is it what would you call it? Horizontal or vertical? I forget which way around it is now.
I believe that one is vertical. Horizontal would be same styles. Vertical, I believe, is different years aged.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We'll have to double check that. But yeah, vertical tasting when you pop over. So I do plan to keep one for at least 3 years and one for at least 5 years, because from what I understand, the flavour of beer quite often when you age it drops off a cliff at about 5 years. And 3 years, when I've done Fuller's Vintage Ale for 3 years before, the results have been spectacular. So some of them need to be saved and given that respect, and to stay to get the most out of them. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I think we did. What was it? 2007, 8, and 9, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
That was all those years ago now.
I believe so. Yeah, I think it was 7, 8, and 9. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll be able to do 14, 15, 16, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll get some more 15 tomorrow.
There you go.
As long as they still have it at the store, which hopefully they will do, tends to disappear quite quickly. But I'll hunt it out. I'll get some 15, clear some more space in my makeshift cellar, and we'll aim for that. Yeah,
there we go. That's our prediction for 2016. We will have a vertical tasting of 3 years of vintage ale.
Indeed. Can you still buy 2013 from Amazon?
You know what? I bet you can find it somewhere online.
Yeah.
Or in some, far corner liquor store in the whatever country you happen to be in.
Yeah.
I'll have to take a look. Might be able to do it this year.
Yeah, maybe. That'd be interesting. Yeah. Cool.
I think that about wraps up this week's episode here. If you're joining late, feel free to watch the replay. We'll also have it on YouTube here. We are Marc and Ponto from Transatlantic Brews, and if you want to know more about beer and enjoy yourself, head over to our website, which is transatlanticbrews.com, where you can get our Beer Geek Toolkit to help enhance your beer tasting experience. It's a free download.
Free download. Cheers.
Cheers. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.